Great.
I do have it, but I'll wait.
Yeah, I haven't started it. I didn't start that one time.
All right, it is 7 o'clock. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll get started. Dave, do you have any questions on attendance? If you haven't already filled out your name on the sheet of paper over here behind Leo, if you could before you leave, that would be great.
Need another chair? Yes. Okay, if I get up and get a chair.
Yeah.
Matthew, go to the last office on your left and grab a chair. Julie's office. Thank you.
Agenda approval. Does anybody have any additions, corrections to the board agenda tonight?
I have some corrections. First one, robotics is not able to make it tonight. They're hoped to come to our meeting in April. Under consent agenda, the minutes for February, we had listed the wrong building where we had the meeting, so that's been changed to Finlayson Elementary School. I'm going too fast. Had a couple additions of communications from after I posted the board agenda, so that is in the communications folder. Policy 902, sounds like community ed is still working on some changes, so I'd take that off for policy reapproval, sorry. We added some names under Jaguar Pride, both number 5 and number 8. And then when I had posted in these resolutions, I had a bad copy and pasting exercise. I had copied the same one under both resolutions. So the second one is completely corrected with the correct resolution in there now. And then I had added in the first one that the donor was from the Hinckley Lions.
Is there any questions regarding the changes to the board agenda? If not, I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda for tonight.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it. There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Next up is open forum. Rules for open forum. There are 3 minutes per speaker. Open forum shall not take more than a total of 15 minutes. No complaints about individual staff members, about students, or about other persons are permitted. All presenters will conduct their business in a manner that meets community standards for decorum. The board will not take action on items presented in open forum. Did anybody sign up, Brian?
Nobody signed up.
Does anybody wish to speak during open forum? Go ahead.
No.
Do you want to state your first and last name, please?
My name is Randy Hickle, and I'm from Hinckley here. I wanted to address the board about 3 issues that I understand you're voting on tonight, so I just wanted to try to get a word in edgewise. Okay, to the Hinckley-Finlayson Board of Education and Administration. Regarding sale of the buses to private transportation firms, we received and evaluated proposed bus purchase by Palmer Bus Service and 4.0 Bus Service, and also received and evaluated both bids for providing bus service at Hinckley-Finlayson. It's clear that Hinckley-Finlayson bus service is much more cost-effective, and we have absolute control over our transportation needs. The extra cost is not worth the convenience should we keep our buses. My next concern is the daycare at Finlayson Elementary. The one, each board member prior to voting for or against opening proposed daycare and or preschool should personally visit one or both. Somewhere, there's quite a few around. And I think it would be really eye-opening if you've all done that. I personally was involved with the preschool at Little Lambs there and helped set that up. They should be within the size and scope of the Finlayson proposal. Just having available space is not adequate. Government mandates and restrictions are enormous. The care and needs of these children are totally different than elementary students, i.e. sight lines to bathrooms, playground equipment, authorization of adults for pickup, drop-off. There's just a whole host of things, guidelines that consume time, energy, and money. What happens when parents are sick or need time off? I hope you check that out. There should never be an anonymous donor allowed to start a new program. All funds received need to be above board, totally transparent. You cannot even write a letter to the editor without your signature. So I saw that somebody had offered $50,000, and that was a concern of mine. Okay, that was all for that. My concern now, number 3, my third concern is for ceremonial smudging in Hinckley-Finlayson High School. Number 1, we need to abide by the Minnesota Clean Indoor Air Act. Number 2, my opinion is this: allow the Native children space to accommodate their wishes regarding ancient Indian traditions. Okay? I recommend we pattern ceremonial teepee to be constructed outside the school. The Shakopee School District, in case you weren't aware, is doing just that. They're building one with the help of Indian students. I believe a structure like this one would ease any negative thoughts about ceremonial smudging on school property. Why am I here speaking tonight? Again, my name is Randy Hickle. I've lived here all my life with my wife Susan, and Sue and I have lived here all our lives, graduated from Hinckley High School, have raised 4 children, all graduates from here, and now 4 grandchildren attending here as well. I sat in one of these chairs that you're sitting in for 10 years, just for conversation. I understand your situation, what you're going to have to go through with it.
Thank you, Randy. Does anybody else wish to speak tonight?
In this negative secular society that we've created, I think it's admirable that the Native Americans have proposed a plan to try to incorporate their culture into their children. That for some reason, all religion has disappeared out of the schools. And so with all of the hurdles that they have to jump through to make this work, including passing the board, I would like to make sure that there's no discrimination against any future child or group that also would want to pursue religious expression within the school or on the grounds.
Can you just state your name, please?
Andrea Zeman.
Thank you, Andrea. Does anybody else wish to speak tonight? Yes.
Hi, my name is Bob Dunnigan, and I've been a school bus driver with Hinckley going on my 13th year, one I missed last season. But in regard to the bigger bus companies taking over like Palmer or 4.0, I have in the last several years talked to, because it's always been on the agenda that 4.0 wanted to come in, but so all those years I've been talking to parents and drivers from all the schools that have something other than what we have here. And they don't get the personal attention, the students and the parents, that a bigger company would offer to them. Like for example, if someone got forgotten or not picked up, they would absolutely have to go in by parents, that would have to bring them into school. Where Hinckley, I have always heard, will find a way to come out and get your child if they didn't have a way to come in. I don't know if this is the right time to be talking about this, but this is, you know, I kind of heard a little bit about the busing and stuff, transportation, Randy's little speech there, so. They don't, as far as I can hear and tell from the other bus drivers that work for 4.0, not Palmer so much, but is they're hired on a like a fixed rate, and they don't have room for increases. As opposed to Hinckley negotiates their wage increases. And our drivers have been pretty satisfied with those, and there's been complaints on the drivers at 4.0 that there's no discussion about it. It's just, that's the way it's gonna be. I'm kind of nervous now, so I can't think of everything I wanted to say, but I would oppose personally having a bigger company. From what I understood was that it costed more to contract than it is to buy a bus and or fix and repair our own buses. Because we do have some buses that are kept here for parts and replacements for the buses that we drive. Yes, we're always short bus drivers, but we're coming out of a pandemic and everybody's afraid to take something, make a commitment to something that they don't know for sure if it's going to explode again, but it's getting better. I mean, I came back. Anyways, that's my deal. I'm for keeping it here.
Thank you, Bob.
Yep.
Does anybody else wish to speak tonight?
Just will get me right away, Jody. George Gempel. I'm for keeping the buses with Hinckley. I've driven over 45 years here for the school district. You know, substitute, regular route and everything. Right now, we're a lot less than having a private. Maybe down the road in a few years, it won't be that way. I don't know, you know. But for right now, I think things are going good. You know, trying to keep. Also the daycare, I'm a little leery about the daycare, like Randy. I don't know. And then about the ceremonial smudging. I just, you know, we have no smoking in school and that, so why would we want to have some kind of smoke in school? You know, that's just my only concerns, you know. I wouldn't, you know, if they wanted, like you said, have something outside the school or on, I don't know if you want to even have it on school property, you know, as such. Because are we setting a precedence for somebody else down the road, you know? Some individual, I want this, or group, or whatever. So that's just my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, George. I have 2 minutes left of open forum if anybody else would like to speak tonight. Great, then we are going to move on to the consent agenda. Does anybody wish to have anything pulled from the consent agenda? Is anything added to the consent agenda, Brian?
Just the change in the February board meeting minutes, which we talked about already.
All right, is there any discussion? If not, I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move that.
I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Next up is the bills. If you could please list the bill number and the page number if you have questions. that would be helpful. Does anybody have any questions regarding the bills? If not, I'm looking for a motion to approve paying the bills.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next up is the superintendent's report. Mr. Masterson.
Thanks. Just an update on some upcoming meetings that are coming. Mr. Sorum in all your folders also wanted me to remind you all there's a band concert, I believe band and choir concert this Thursday, so he cordially invites you all to attend if you're able to do that. Otherwise, I have most of my updates and things that I need school board action on in the agenda, so the only just reminder update, Heather Hanson's agreed to hand out diplomas at graduation, and Ms. Hinckley plans to share her plan for graduation as we get a little bit closer. Baccalaureate will be back in person this year on Wednesday, May 22nd, and actually the time's at 7:30, not 7 p.m. Any questions for me on anything in my update?
You and I did have a community ed meeting tonight and community development.
Okay, I wanted that.
All right, is there any questions for Brian?
I do have a question. Brian, we did get an exit interview. Do we ever get a chance to discuss those as a board? Discuss those at board meetings, or how do we do that?
We haven't in the past discussed at a board meeting. You could certainly send me questions, and I could certainly put that in front of the full school board.
Sure.
All right, next up is high school principal, Ms. Hinckley.
Good evening. First on my agenda is the MCA plan. We're looking at trying something a little bit different this year with students testing in their classroom with their teacher versus doing a mass testing. One thing that we talked about is that students, when they're with their teachers, they have a different, with their teachers, it just makes it more like they're in their normal classrooms versus getting spread out into multiple classrooms, doing it in smaller chunks of time so they're not testing for multiple hours at a time. So we're looking at trying something different this year to see if that helps support our students. Teachers right now are working on goal setting with students around looking at what they did last year and making a goal for improvement this year, as well as incorporating test prep a little bit each week as they get ready for testing. Number 2 is conference numbers from this year, spring conference. We're constantly looking at different ways to try and get families involved at the high school. On the Thursday night, we did have the fry bread bar for families to come in and have a treat when they came to conferences. But this is kind of typical numbers that we see every year. So again, we'll bring this back to our leadership team to look at some different ideas or things we can do to get more families involved at the high school for conferences. And number 3 on my list is the science fair plan for next year. So this is kind of after a year of trying different things, talking with our team. This is the recommendation from my teachers going forward. So in the first link is the 7th and 8th grade mini science fair project plan. And so what will happen in 7th grade is at the end of the school year, students will be put in groups and doing one of these science fair type projects in a more structured setting. So instead of them choosing, they're doing one of these projects where Jeff Tyson, who is the science fair coordinator, will walk them through kind of a mini science fair in 7th grade. And then in 8th grade, again, Logan with Earth Science also does a mini science fair project at the end of 8th grade to kind of prep them. And then what Jeff did this year after going to the science fair is he brought in the kids that went, that were really excited about actually going to the science fair, and did a little kind of demonstration or talk to all the students. And we actually had 30 8th and 9th graders that are interested in doing the science fair elective. And so kind of looking at our numbers and how many students were really successful, we feel like this is a really great opportunity to still incorporate the science fair, but not make it a requirement in that 9th grade class in order to pass. So we're really kind of, our teachers are really excited about it. Jeff had a really great experience taking the kids to the science fair and kind of has some new excitement to really push this as an elective class and really work with those students that are excited about it and continue to see that as a part of Hinckley, but just not as a big, huge part of the content class going forward. So tonight, looking for board approval to go forward with this plan for next year.
Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Henke?
So when you say 30 students are interested, do you mean 30 students have signed up for that elective course
Yes.
for next year?
Yes.
Okay.
Things could change between now and then, but yes, there are 30 students that said they would like to sign up for the elective next year.
Do they have any opportunity between now and next fall to change their mind?
Yes, yeah.
So when is their final decision due?
Katie does schedule changes up through the first week of school.
Okay. But
So
typically,
kids could, sorry,
go ahead.
kids can still join in at that point as well.
Okay, but typically students have made their bid for next year already then, and they don't
Yes.
do a whole lot of changes?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yep.
Who would teach that elective course then?
it would be Jeff Tyson, same
Okay.
person that took them to the science fair this year.
Okay.
Yep.
And would that be just a quarter class or
It'd be a semester. It'd be the whole first semester until they
Okay.
go compete.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so I am looking for a motion to approve. And I'm looking for
I'll
a second. There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you very much. Teachers will be very happy. Just my number 4 is dates. For this year, we have McDonald's night for the high school, looking to raise some more money for student incentives for positive behavior and also for rewards for meeting their goals for MCAs. And then we're kind of in that fun transition from winter activities into spring, and so I will let my wonderful high school students share a little bit about what's happening. Thanks.
Basketball is over. The girls finished 19-10. Then we made it to the second round playoffs and we lost by a lot.
It didn't go too well, but first round we did win by 30 points. So.
And then the boys finished
8-19, I think.
and they lost.
First round by 3 to Barnum. It was a good game to watch. We went up there, all three of us did support. I'm Hannah Harnell, and now today we started spring sports, softball, baseball, track. Yeah, it was interesting practice today. Started out by running inside, but it was nice enough, so we went outside and practiced for a bit. We're getting out on the fields tomorrow, so that'll be nice.
Well, I'm Matt Masterson. I'll talk about the arts a little bit. So robotics has recently ended. They had a successful meet in Duluth. Unfortunately, they didn't move on, but I heard great things about the robot and about how they just had a lot of fun. For speech, we've been having a very successful year so far. Our coach, Frau, says that it's been like one of the most successful years she's ever seen, which is pretty cool. Each of our members, we have a small team, but each of us are like breaking into the final round every time and placing, and it's been pretty cool. And yeah, we have a band concert, as mentioned, this Thursday at 7. It'd be jazz band, junior high band, choir, and concert band. That'd be cool if we had some people show up. And yeah, for school, third quarter ends next Friday, I think. And yeah, we're getting close to the end here. A little stressful, but
For softball, we also, not this Friday, but the next Friday, we already have a little tournament coming up. So I think we play 2 teams, but we get the opportunity to play on a turf field at St. Cloud State, so that's pretty cool. Never done that before. So we'll see how that goes.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Henke or the students? Not? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is elementary school principals. Just Bonnie Spiller.
We are also planning and prepping for MCA testing. We will stick with our motto that we onboarded last year: we can master, we are capable, and we will achieve. We are working individually with our grade levels to try and incentivize and get kids to buy in, that is the big ticket. We already do testing with our grade levels, so that's already there. It's really just getting the kids to put forth that effort and use some of those skills that they have obtained throughout their educational career. So we'll continue on that journey. That is middle of April, we'll start testing and we'll finish up with science in May. Our sixth graders at Angela took a trip up to Wolf Ridge. I did my typical Wednesday visit up there. Not much snow to speak of, however, there was lots and lots of icy trails. We had some teachers and chaperones go down a few times, but our kids, for the most part, did pretty well. So we're still working on the adults. We'll get there. I guess the one thing I have to say about Wolf Ridge is it's a great experience, but we have, over the past couple of years, seen an increase in kids that are staying back. So I really want to get on that and figure out the why. It's not the money, because we have some additional funds that are available to them if they wanted to go. A lot of anxiety, a lot of being away from parents, it's a lot of work. I mean, it is a lot of work, so, and we had amazing chaperones. We could not do that trip without our chaperones, so really thank them for that. We are looking at our scheduling this year at Hinckley Elementary. We are lower in pre-K and K. So we are hosting various activity nights to see if we can get those numbers back up as we are trying to get class sizes into Mr. Masterson. The other shuffling that we're doing is with band, trying to look at how we can still offer a sixth grade band without pulling them out of core, both for lessons and for full band, because that is what's happening right now, and it's not okay. So we're working on that. Our parent-teacher conference, our lowest is about 78%, so that's pretty amazing in the spring. We do have set up appointments for each parent, so they're kind of obligated, or our teachers really work hard to meet with them on their timeline, so that's really awesome. As Matt had mentioned, the quarter ends on the 22nd. We are looking at a quarter 3 reward day for Hinckley Elementary. Off our pause tickets and behavior referrals. I think what's pretty amazing is 404, 85% of our students do not have a behavior referral in the third quarter when I type this up. Things could change a little bit, but not much. And you can see the numbers there. We're sitting pretty good for behavior referrals, so really proud of that and really excited to see what our students are doing in the classrooms. Mr. Masterson will talk about extended school year, but we do still see the need for having our special ed students who can attend the summer, really focusing on their IEP goals. Another shout out, thank you to Heather and Janelle who came and observed the classrooms. That was awesome. Heard a lot of good feedback from our teachers on that. And then our I Love to Read month, I'm sure if you haven't seen our social media, we've been doing amazing things. Collected 95,000 minutes of reading through the month of February. So pretty amazing things.
Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Spiller? Thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
Up next is community ed.
All right.
Becky.
Thank you, Jody. You can see here, we've had a busy February, lots going on, basketball, youth wrestling, we had some youth activities, good turnouts. We're really starting to see people coming out again. We started up yoga again, and that's gonna be extended. And that enrollment is continuing to increase. Our walking track is typical for this time of year, was at 142 for the month of February, so that was great. I did ask Mr. Masterson to pull that, our facility use policy for 1 month. We wanted to make one change to just ensure that our nonprofit, no charge room rental would be for our community nonprofit group. So if you come from outside of our community, you would not get that break. So anyway, that's why the little holdup in that policy 902. But we'll have that ready for your approval next month. A couple things coming up too. We had our mother-son bowling yesterday at the Sandstone Lanes. Last year Angela put this together and we had 40 that came out. We filled up all the lanes. This year we had almost twice that number that came out, mother and sons, and we had to do 2 sessions. We really kept Jody busy. Just sold a lot of pizza. And so we had from 1 to 2:30 and then 3 to 4:30. Just went great. They had kind of a neon bowl, which was really, really fun. I also wanted to highlight, we've partnered with Pine Tech with the Family, Friends, and Neighbors Childcare. They received a grant and they reached out to us, and for 4 nights tonight is one of the nights, last Monday, and then there's one in April, one in May. It's an ECFE event, and they sent up a parent educator. She's actually a professor at the college, and she's doing a parent ed session, and then the children have activities. And then our dean at the elementary, Miss Maggie Lee, was actually able to get another grant to provide a meal. So that's also included. So we had 2 families that signed up. And so I got a note from Pine Tech saying, oh, should we still do it? And I said, yep, we gotta do it, it's out there. We had about 10 families that came. So it just came out really good. And I know I haven't been there tonight, but I'm assuming there's even more tonight. So that's going really, really well. And that, like I said, was from a grant from Pine Tech. I also wanted to highlight, Angela was gracious enough to open up the Finlayson Thursday nights for open gym. We had about 90 people show up. We also have an open gym here at Hinckley Elementary from 6 to 7 on Monday nights. That's just taken off now, so we're grateful for that. We're getting ready for our father-daughter dance. Our theme is party. It's a golf theme. You have to kind of dig deep on some of these. So please swing by for the father-daughter party. That will be on April 13th. And I just wanted to give a shout out to Ashley Johnson, her construction class. She actually kind of volunteered to do this. She's making putting holes in her construction class. So we're going to have 4 little putting holes, and it's going to be a real fun night. We have a lifeguard class coming up. As you know, we are in a real shortage of trying to find lifeguards. If anybody here is interested in lifeguards, we've got a class coming up. We could train you. We actually have a couple of adults that are going through the training. We're always looking for lifeguards and WSI instructors. That's going to start on March 18th, and we do have enough to run that class, so we're thankful for that. I've got on there, Serve Safe, we're looking for an instructor. We did find an instructor, so that's up and going. Yoga's going. We've got hat making, crochet classes coming, so we've just been busy. It's been going really well. Any thoughts or questions? Or sign up for that lifeguard class.
Does anybody have any questions for Becky? Thank you, Becky.
Thank you.
We will move right on to transportation. Bruce.
I'm Bruce Beckman, Transportation Supervisor here at Hinckley. As you can see, currently we have 4.0 covering 1 route with us. I already have a driver in place for the end of the school year. Covering vacations and so forth, we're getting by. Holly just got back from Florida, so she had a good time there. I have a couple of drivers testing tomorrow, so we'll see how that goes. So things are moving on pretty good there. Going back to Bonnie with their reading class today, we took the students out to Subway for dinner today for their treat, for their award for winning. Let's see. Trips have been going well. Still vehicle shortage. Scrambling, but making things work. Activity routes, we don't have them this year. Maybe some year we can bring that back again. And as far as #1 fuel this year, null and void. It's been quite a winner, to say the least. Everything is going good with stops. We received an $85,000 grant to put new cameras into our buses. So I got a phone call today, they'll be here mid-April to install those, so things should be going good there. Hopefully we can get more stop arm violations and prosecuted so far. I had a good week. I had a couple more inquiries about where do I get in applications for employment, so I'm liking the way things look.
Does anybody have any questions for Bruce regarding transportation? His transportation report?
The stop arm grant, does that cover all the buses, or is that just, how many cameras does that allow us? How many buses would have cameras?
All the route buses
Okay.
would have cameras, and it includes 4 inside cameras and a forward-facing camera and a stop arm camera.
Oh. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Next up is new direction report. Julie.
Hello, everyone. The report is similar to what I do each year, just kind of programmed by the numbers, just kind of the housekeeping. I do have some updates for to date as far as we're into semester 2. So that number is going to look a little different. We've added 33 new referrals and 70 like 177 as far as days attended. So that's just been for third quarter to current. I did want to mention, I think I had maybe a year or so ago, I was just kind of informally looking at tracking how extracurricular activity relates to the referral numbers that I see. I had some suspicions that there was a pretty high correlation. I started tracking it specifically this year, depending on the week, because every week is different, but percentages were very high. So as far as I can tell, it's the single most unifying factor for referrals as far as not having any extracurricular involvement or buy-in to the school. And that's not just Hinckley, that's program-wide. So percentages range from low 70s to 80s. So solidly 75% of kids I see, and often those are repeated students as well, have no buy-in or any positive attachment to activities like outside of the school day. I think it's just something to look at and always be discussing. I know I talk to principals about it, superintendents when I can. It's a way we can definitely be proactive in having pro-social behavior and not just reactive to the negative behaviors that we see. I don't have all the answers or ideas, but I at least wanted to just formally put it out there as a discussion because I think it's really important to improving school culture and positive behavior in general.
Does anybody have any questions for Julie?
I guess this would be more a question for Kim. At the 7th grade open house, is there a presentation done for the 7th graders as far as what extracurricular activities are offered?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they do that as part of that orientation.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
We actually do that closer at the end of the school year too. They come over for a 7th grade, just a real quick look at thing, and they have like a sports fair or activities fair in the gym that they can kind of see everything that's offered to them, and then they get it again at open house.
Okay. And I guess I'm looking more towards like speech or robotics or not just.
They're both there as well.
Okay.
At that activity.
The fine art events are there
But
too.
yeah,
Okay.
band,
Band,
drama.
choir, speech,
Drama's
drama.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Anybody else have any questions for Julie? If not, thank you, Julie. Next up is board committees. Does anybody wish to speak on their board committees for this last month? Nobody? I guess I will speak on behalf of the support staff negotiations, we've met with all of the parties, and Mr. Masterson is doing some research on our surrounding neighboring districts and getting some information, and we'll meet back with them, what do you think, the third week of April or something?
Hopefully before that, hopefully by the end of the month.
Oh, maybe by the end of the month.
That's my hope.
All right, we will move on. Communications, there is an orange folder going around regarding communications. If you haven't read it, maybe catch it after the board meeting. There's quite a few in there, it looks like. Next up is unfinished business and budget topics.
So as we go through the next month, and we'll talk about it more in April, I'm tentatively thinking of calling a budget work session with the full school board in April to go over, where our budget is, staffing, materials. By then we'll know where all our coaching requests and all those extra requests have come in. So I'll start sending out some possible dates for mid to end April to do that. But otherwise, kind of where we are budget-wise, teachers have now submitted all their budget requests to the building principals. They will probably have those in their hand tomorrow once they're compiled. And then they'll have some time to start going through that and look at those requests and talk with staff about maybe why those requests are there. I will begin to meet with Ms. Hinckley and Kim. Well, we have met individually, but we will continue to meet both individually and as a team to kind of talk about some of our finances, which I'll get to in a little bit, about what we can do to kind of meet some of the needs that we have with our revenue versus our expenses. School board action at this time is to review the capital budget, which is here. I have not changed this other than Keith and maintenance has added a couple that you haven't seen since last month, but nothing has been taken off of the capital budget for any of these three categories yet, because I wanted to wait and see kind of what happens towards the end of this school board meeting with the ability to use some of our ESSER funds to possibly purchase some of these things early. And if we're able to do that, that may bring some more flexibility to our capital budget and bring it closer to what our spending was last year for our capital budget. But were there any questions of any of the things that are currently on the capital budget? You have two of those department heads here today that could answer those. Otherwise, like I said, my plan is once we get through this meeting and specifically the ESSER conversation later in the agenda, then I'll meet with the three, Jessica, Keith, and Bruce, to fine tune this to bring for approval in April. The other thing, you can see where we are as far as the school year, which isn't a perfect picture, but March 1st is roughly 66% of the school year. And as far as our approved budget, we've spent about 60% of that budget. Typically, we're happy if those are within a 2% of each other. So we are currently happy because we're doing a little bit better than that. And you can see last year at this time, we had spent about 65% of our budget compared to 66% of the school year. The big one I wanted to talk about is our revenue projections as I'm beginning to work on next year's budget. And we talked about it last month a little bit with when we approved our amended budget, but I wanted to start pulling together. The state had already kind of come out with new dollars for the next school year, which is basically 2% on the student formula. And I wanted to see, especially with our declining enrollment, how that impacts our budget. So the best we know as of, last Thursday, those numbers are in here. And I'm really focusing on these last three columns, G, H, and J. G is the budget that was proposed in June. The revised budget is what we did last month in February, and then 24-25 as we start to plan next year's budget. And when I scroll down to the bottom with kind of all these, and I'm specifically looking at the general fund summary, in June I had told the school board our general fund budget for revenue was a little bit over 15 million. We just approved amended budget where that was 14,590,203, and as of right now, our revenue is projected to be at 14,310,952. the two numbers that I'm looking at are the first one, the 15,111,526, and the last one. And the reason is this is what we built our programming and our staffing on, that budget. And this is where our proposed revenue is as of, like I said, March 4th. So that's about an $800,000 difference of not having as much revenue. One area we are still specifically looking at, and we talked about a little bit last month in February, is the special ed revenue, which we have put in a very conservative number for next year. And he had left, I work with a financial institute out of Ehlers to help with this. We had actually changed this in our proposed budget in February to 2 million. If you remember talking about with the thought of maybe having 400,000 still coming in. We believe that's still gonna be the case for next year, but for now we left it conservative. And the reason we left it even under 2 million is to kind of help compensate maybe having, I hope not, but if we have more enrollment loss for next year. So we left that as a conservative number for now until we get a little better handle, especially as we see our kindergarten enrollment for next year. And we are still doing research on the special ed revenue, which I believe is gonna come in over 2 million. But I didn't wanna put that number in for next year yet until we know that for certain and we get a little better handle on what our enrollment is. So I believe 800,000 is going to be a very worst case scenario, but I don't have enough information to say it's gonna be for sure less than that. It could be anywhere from 400,000 to 800,000. So the principals and I will begin to work on where, how, knowing that we put all those positions and programmings in for a reason, how can we do reductions with the least amount of disruption to what the students need. We have not run yet the other fund summaries, things like that. We've left those numbers in as we had in the past. As the general fund summary is where the big portion of our revenue comes from. What are there questions on that part? Yeah. Otherwise, that's all I had in that part. You can see our enrollment's at about 934 as of March 1st, which is down, I think, 5 from last month.
And there is no action item.
And I don't have any action items, so that should not be on there.
Right. Does anybody have any questions? I know Brian asked. And we are gonna move on to policy reapproval, and it is just the one tonight. Policy number 618, assessment of student achievement. So I'm looking for a motion to accept that policy.
I have a question. Were you able to look at that?
Yeah, the part that, so I had a question on this a little earlier today. Is everything in here what the state still requires? I think the biggest question, at least internally, we had was where they bring up this writing test, and this is the part when it becomes available, if it becomes available again, as the state currently does not require a high school writing test for the kids to take. So I think the way the policy is written is fine, just if and when that policy or requirement becomes mandated again, we will do that.
Does anybody have any more questions? If not, I'm looking for a motion to accept policy 618, assessment of a student achievement.
I'll make the motion.
There's a motion, is there a second?
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second, is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Next up are school board goals.
Just as, again, we go into April and May, I'd like to start talking about setting our school board goals for next year. Both last school year and this school year, we have had these 3 items as our main items where we want to focus our school board goals, with improving school climate and staff morale, student academic growth and achievement, and fiscal responsibility. This year, you can see we have some bullet items under each one, but just wondering if the school board would like to see anything else for next year, for us admin team to research anything else before we set school board goals for next school year.
Could we maybe consider ways to communicate with the public more effectively? Could we perhaps think about posting the school board agenda on the school website so the public will see what we see minus the confidential stuff?
The full agenda?
Right.
Yep. Okay.
Does anybody else have anything to add?
Otherwise, I'll come with a skeleton plan and we can discuss a little bit further in detail next month.
All right, next up is Jake Pride. Does anybody have anything else to add to Jake Pride?
Just on number 7, it's PTO.
Number 7. Correct.
Great, if there's no other ads, then we are going to move on to the Achievement and Integration Plan.
Looking for approval of our Achievement Integration Plan. Our biggest, and I'll go through some more, our biggest part, our Achievement Integration Plan is together with, and I want to get to the right page so I don't miss one of the school districts. It's together with East Central, Pine City, and I believe McGregor is the other one, and Willow River. East Central, Willow River, Pine City, and McGregor. We come together to develop this Achievement and Integration Plan. And the biggest part where the school districts minus McGregor work together is on the New Direction program, which is our suspend off the street. So basically, instead of suspending a student at home, we try to find a way to still keep them in school, yet maybe serve some consequences, but still able to get their education. So this plan, that's the biggest area that these districts all work together. We work together on some other programming and things like that, but that's the biggest fiscal one that we work together on for us, because the integration plan becomes part of what these districts work together because of our enrollment in some of our lower minority groups, specifically Native American kids. We have the most enrollment in Native American population, so we get some more funding that the other school districts do not. And kind of how we use that funding is for direct services to students, and you can kind of see how that's broken out with dollars, with professional development. But specifically what it's used for is we have smart mentors, which I think it's on this page. Ooh, I didn't click happy. We have smart mentors at both buildings, and of course it's not fun. We have the New Direction program, and we have something that Ms. Hinckley specifically looking at for next year is bringing in some more speakers quarterly to help deal with some of motivation, behaviors, bullying, redirection, teaching kids. So we're trying to bring in some more professional development in for our student body to help with some of the needs that we're seeing. But it also helps fund our social worker position in the Hinckley-Finlayson district. Are there any questions on the Achievement and Integration Plan?
If there's no questions, I'm looking for a motion to accept the Achievement and Integration Plan for fiscal year 25.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Next up is e-learning days.
Sorry, Jody. We don't have any e-learning days built into next year's calendar. I really hope we don't have to use any e-learning days in next year's calendar. But if we do have to state what the plan would be if we needed to pull e-learning days in next year. And we need to put that out so that the public and community and the state knows what our plans would be. So I just changed the dates of our current e-learning plan. Actually, I haven't changed them yet until after you approve it, but it's the same e-learning plan we have used for many years. But we need to approve that in case we ever have an e-learning day next year where we would have to call that. It's that are not built into the calendar. We have built in makeup days first, but if we have a winter like last, it would certainly be something we may have to use. So looking for reapproval of our e-learning plan.
So how many makeup days would take place before we get into the e-learning?
I believe we built 3 in, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
We had built 2 in during the year, and then we would extend the year 1 day if we had to.
If there's no other questions, I'm looking for a motion to accept our e-learning plan.
I'll move that.
One second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Next up is our extended school year plans.
I'm looking for approval on these 6 plans, 5 plans. These plans are driven by students in special education by their IEPs based on how the IEP team feels their academics have gone and if they could benefit from some extended time. Our extended school year is in June. And most of these, all of these proposals are being driven by what's mandated in the student's IEP. I can certainly go through any of the 5 if you'd like, but looking for approval on these 5 extended school year plans.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Next up are first reads for policy 106, the grievance procedures, and policy 405, recognition and compensation.
These are not new policies to our district. They are policies we've had that just haven't had a review since, I think, 2017. So they're just up on the cycle for reading through and approval next month.
Does anybody have any questions tonight regarding the 2 policies? Not, they will be on next month for approval. Next up is transportation recommendation.
I am recommending that the school board would reject the transportation bids from both service as well as from 4.0 bus service. I also would recommend that the school board reject the bids from both Palmer and 4.0 in regards to the purchasing the transportation fleet. My reasons for that would be 2. First one, since October, November, we are in a little bit better spot than we were then with our staffing. We've hired Bruce, and we have a couple people who are hoping to get licensed this week with another person out in the community who is willing to take on the route that 4.0 has helped us with this year, as well as just this past week, Bruce has had a couple people show interest in wanting to get involved with our transportation department. So from a staffing standpoint, it feels a little healthier than it did in October or November. And then the other reason, as we just kind of talked about with our revenues and expenses, when we talked through our bid comparisons last month, both companies had increase in dollar amounts compared to what we currently spend, and with facing possibly anywhere from $400,000 to $800,000 in potential cuts, that it's hard to recommend taking on added costs at this time. So my recommendation would be to reject the bids from both companies, both for transportation and for purchasing our fleet.
So I'm looking for a motion to accept the transportation recommendation.
Can I put in some thoughts before we go? Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, first off, I wanted to thank the bus drivers in the transportation department for taking the time to fill out those surveys, and be honest with them. It was really useful feedback, so thank you for doing that. With reading through those, my takeaways were that you feel that there's still too many unknowns. You're not sure if your wages will be affected, or if you go backwards. You're not sure what your benefits would look like if you'd have the same route, if you could take your buses home. You're worried that you'd lose the relationships with your students and their families. And also you don't want to lose that close-knit atmosphere that you have in the bus garage. As a board, I feel it's our responsibility to get the answers to as many of these unknowns for you guys as possible before we make a decision based on all of the facts. So because of that, I feel that rejecting both bids would not be in our best interest. What I would like to suggest that we decide as a board to move into a negotiation phase with each company. That would allow us to get into the weeds about what it would really look like for Hinckley-Finlayson. And That would allow the drivers to enter into one-on-one negotiations with each company. Then you can find out what's good for you versus what's good for all of the drivers, because it's gonna look different for one driver that's been here for 35 years and say a driver that has been here for 2 or 3. Then you can work on those personal negotiations and tailor them to exactly what you need and what you're looking for. It's not a one-size-fits-all. Then that would allow the board to go into negotiations with each company too, obviously separately. And I think it's important that the drivers go in separately one-on-one as well, because then you can ask honest, private information and get that tailored just for you. Then the board could also ask the tough questions and go into negotiating the full contract. The bids, in my opinion, and what I gather, are just like a basis. Each company gives like their basis of this is what we normally start at, and then you negotiate with that. So then it could be tailored again to our school and our district, and then we could really compare apples to apples, because I don't feel like we've been able to do that right now. Because there's been some discrepancies in bids, maybe we're calculating things differently than the bus companies are calculating them. So in opening up the door to negotiate, we can figure out if we're calculating those figures the same. Then I think after the drivers and the board has had a chance to negotiate with each company, considering both companies are open to negotiating with us if we're negotiating with each other, then maybe we resurvey the bus drivers and the transportation department, see how they feel after being able to talk one-on-one with the company. It's easy to assume things, I think, from what we hear. And I think it's important that we give the companies a chance to tell us, no, like what you're hearing as an assumption maybe isn't the full truth. As far as losing the relationships with the students and the families, that stays the same. Like, you're still the first and the last person that those kids see during their school day. Nothing changes in how I say things in that process. You would still, if a kid was left on the bus or like fell asleep and didn't get off, that would still go to Bruce, and Bruce would say, oh, and we would still get that child home. I feel like that would still be the same. As far as the morale in the bus garage, you would still all be there if you choose to accept whatever company is going, like, everybody gets their job if they want it. So I feel like you'd still have each other, you'd still be able to work as a team, like you'd still have Bruce, he's still your go-to guy. Things might look a little bit different for Bruce, but then with either company, then you're just expanding your network. You still have the people that you work closely with in your building, but then say Bruce is short a driver, then you can reach out and say, hey, I need help, like, can somebody fill in a route for me? You can get additional drivers to help with vacation time, PTO, the unexpected things that happen. You have a bigger network of drivers that could maybe come and help. Say the mechanic is really struggling with something, DOTs are coming up, maybe a mechanic from a different location can come and like help with that. Help you get through the things that are maybe needing to be fixed, and then you can learn together, bounce questions off of each other. So you're still working with day-to-day who you have, but then you're just expanding your network. And you can bounce ideas off of the whole company, anybody that's in there. But I don't know, just my thought, I mean, it would be, in my opinion, nice to get into negotiations so we can figure out what the true cost comparisons would be for Hinckley-Finlayson, for each individual driver individually, and not just lumping everybody into a group.
I think even costs aside, even if the bid was lower than our cost to do bus transportation, I still feel strategically we need to maintain our own bus fleet internally, because once we sell off our bus fleet and farm it out, there's no getting it back. It'd be too expensive to get it back.
I agree with.
I feel we're still currently lower than the other bids. So I think we're more cost effective anyway.
That, yeah, the bids are higher than what we're doing it ourselves, but I think we could continue to operate our buses while we negotiate with these two companies. We really don't have to be in any kind of a hurry. And if we sell our buses to them, that money can go in the bank. If everything goes sour, you gotta buy them back. So, what have we got to lose? We negotiate products for our cafeteria. We negotiate a lot of stuff. I think we should still keep talking.
I'd say the way things have gone, reputation of our drivers and the thing, I think we should stay where we are, where we have more control of our buses. I think we can be very proud of our drivers and a supervisor and mechanic. And I agree with Toby. Once we switch to another company, in my opinion, we're screwed. We'll never be able to go back. So.
And I feel too, when the contract's up for renewal, costs could really spiral out of control because we're not in a good position to negotiate because we don't own any buses anymore. And I feel like, but we're already in a budgetary squeeze. We need to maintain our keep our buses so we can have more control over our budget. We're already in a budget shortfall. We can't let it get away from us. And our bus drivers do a heck of a good job. We have a great safety record and fabulous professional team of bus drivers, and I wouldn't want to farm them out. And I do have one other question. Heather, does your husband work for 4.0?
He does.
Will you be voting on this issue?
Yes, because there is no personal gain.
Okay.
But thank you for asking.
Yep.
There's nothing to say that we can't come back to this next year if we ran into, say we did last fall.
Certainly, we could go out and seek bids again.
And there was one question in the bus driver questionnaires that was, why did this whole topic of farming out our bus service, how did that even come up? What was the genesis of the whole idea?
If you remember back in October, we were very, very much struggling to get someone behind the wheel of our buses every day. Our transportation director had resigned with given us about a month's notice. So the biggest issue was because we couldn't get a bus driver behind the wheel of our bus every single day. And we also wanted, it's been talked about from time to time, it was a good time with that information to also see what the bid comparisons would be. But the biggest genesis was because of staffing.
And now we're looking much better, right?
It is better than it was in September and October, or October, November.
Okay.
It makes a good point on bus repairs. You have more talent to call on to get them fixed. Instead of taking them to a commercial place like I think it's United, where you gotta drive them up there with two people, go up and get them with two people. That's all free. So that's a good point to have some resources for troubles that stuff's complicated as can be. And seems like things break down altogether and you have more capacity to take it to another place to get fixed that's close by. I think that's an advantage that should be considered.
And just last week, we were short vehicles, so we had to call on 4.0, if I'm correct, to help us out. In Bruce's transportation report, he had said, that things they're a little tricky. Yes, we are looking good right now for drivers, but we've also we were looking okay in October, and then the wheels fell off again. And this, by going into a negotiation phase with each company, I feel like we're not saying that we're going to contract with either one at this time. That's just opening up the door to see what each company really has to offer us. Maybe the drivers, would be surprised at where they could start, where they can go, the different incentives, for safe driving, clean buses, just like the different things that may be given to them. maybe the board would be surprised at how close those numbers really come. It's not, to go into negotiations is not saying that we are going to choose either one of these companies in the long run. It's just getting all of our facts, all of the numbers, because I've heard from the community drivers, the board, we want to be able to compare apples to apples and have a true, accurate cost comparison, and I don't feel that we can have that if we don't negotiate and see. There's a reason that districts do go to private companies. I mean, and then my worry if we, did table this and then next year say we got into a situation where we were short drivers again and wanted to revisit this, would Palmer and 4.0 be willing to bid again and open up the door again after coming this far and not really even going all the way in through negotiating? I mean, would you guys even want to bid again? I mean, that's, I think, something that we really need to keep in mind too. I'm not suggesting we vote to go into contract with either company, just to really hear what each company has to offer.
Brian, would we have to make any cuts to programming if we went with 4.0 or Palmer?
We might have to add, both have additional costs from what we currently have. So, yes, there could be additional cuts depending, to meet our 25% if we want to hit that. Or if, my assumption is we would want to put that money we get for our transportation fleet into a savings account in case it wouldn't work out for some reason. Another option was we could spend that, but then it'd be kind of solidifying if something did go bad. We definitely wouldn't have a way to get out of that if it didn't work out for either side.
I guess my only comments are, we sent out the bid and we received the bids. It didn't state we were going to negotiate or that there was an option to negotiate. I felt like that's why we had the work session a couple weeks ago. Both companies were here, our bus drivers were here. We also had the bus drivers back in October at a school board meeting to give us their feedback and to ask questions at that time. So I don't know, I feel like we did what we were asking. We went out and we got the bids, and there's a recommendation, so.
I would make a motion if you're ready for it, Jody. Are you ready for a motion? Okay, I would make a motion that we take the recommendation with a thank you to Palmer Bus Service and 4.0 for taking the time and providing the information they gave to us, but keep our present.
I'll second that motion.
So there's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Do we need another vote then to, if we reject both bids, to continue the inquiry that we just all talked about?
Someone would have to make that motion.
You have to get through this motion and this second first, since there has
So that would be a different motion, okay?
Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. We'll do roll call. Leo,
Yes.
Toby,
Yes.
Angela,
Yes.
Heather, no. Dave,
Yes.
Jody, yes. So now another motion can be made. I would like to make a motion to move into a negotiation phase with both companies, Palmer and 4.0, in order to compare final costs
and allow the bus drivers and the transportation department to personally negotiate on their behalfs as well as the school board.
I'll second
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Doesn't that circumvent the whole bidding process? Just the bids have been shot down, now we're just gonna go and negotiate with those two bidders?
I did check with our district attorney on that. We would be allowed to do that by statute, go into the direct negotiation.
Is there any other questions?
What your recommendation on that motion be, Ryan, if I put you on the spot?
More information never hurts. I would think, and I've never done it, I would think we would probably want legal representative, just because I've never done that before, so I would think there'd be some costs to bring possibly our legal reps involved with that. But getting more information is never a bad thing.
I think we've got the most important information. They're gonna be more expensive. They cannot do it cheaper than we do it. I don't know what more information we need.
Right, I do know that it was maybe felt that the companies maybe felt like they're actually closer in their costs than what was perceived, and that they would maybe come as close but at like closer when everything was calculated the same as we calculated it here, and then had time to negotiate through those things. That's what the negotiation period would help solve, is any of the questions of where are the discrepancies. And then it would really just give us a clear picture of what the costs really are. And so say, that after negotiations, everybody still feels like, yeah, we still want to keep our bus fleet here and keep transportation in our control, that's fine. But at least we took that extra step to negotiate, see where we can maybe meet in the middle on some things, see what there is for the drivers, give them the chance to negotiate for themselves, because we've met together, but both companies have been in the same room at the same time. And just like a coach, you wouldn't show the opposing coach your playbook. So they don't want to sit and tell all of their perks with the other company sitting there. The drivers, like some of their questions might be personal, like, of what maybe they can get. I wouldn't want to negotiate my wage with you, and I'm sure you wouldn't want to negotiate your wage with me in the room. So I think it's just maybe that concept of letting them get a one-on-one, and then we resurvey them, see how their thoughts are, and at least it would maybe take away the fears of the unknowns, the fears of going backwards, the fears of not knowing what they're going to get. And then I think we take those surveys, and then we'll really know.
And then when it's time to renegotiate the next contract, now there's this big unknown. How much is our transportation cost gonna go up? Could they stick it to us? Because we're not in any position to negotiate.
Yeah.
We don't own a bus fleet anymore.
You're right, but that's where
Why would we wanna do that
when we were in
strategically?
negotiations, that's what we could talk about. We could talk about what that would look like. I know that 4.0 said that in the emails that we got, they're willing to negotiate the full contract. I know that Palmer said that they're willing to negotiate the percentage of increase through the next year. I don't think it's unreasonable that we hear them out and have it tailored to Hinckley-Finlayson schools, and not just,
More information.
we're not out anything, we're not voting to move forward with either company. I feel like we're giving each company the ability to say, hey, this is what we can give you. And then we decide, yeah, maybe the costs still aren't there. Maybe our drivers just still feel really strongly. And that's what we would decide then, but then we have all the information.
I think we're just spinning our wheels, no pun intended.
Well, that's fine.
But I feel like we need to focus, we need to spend our time doing more important things, like why are we losing students? Let's get to the bottom of that, because it's deeply affecting our budget.
Can I ask, When you said more important things, why would transportation be less important than something else?
Because go ahead.
Because transportation, that's our most precious kids are on those buses.
I agree. But we've already got the best providing transportation for our students.
Yes, and I'm not saying that we don't, we have great drivers, we have a great supervisor. Why not let them negotiate to see if their wages could be better, to see if their benefits could be better, to see if their paid time off could be better, to have a network where more of them could maybe potentially have the same day off because there's a pool of drivers from different locations that can step in and fill that. Why not give them what they deserve and at least give them the opportunity to have the discussions and then they can make the decisions themselves. It's not us as a board saying, we know what's best for the drivers. The drivers, Bruce, the mechanic, they know what's best for them.
Heather, did you read the surveys from all the bus drivers?
I absolutely 100% did.
And what did
Toby,
they say?
And you know what I did is I even took the time to make a Word document. And I put each question and I typed up all of the answers from each driver under each one. I spent so much time looking at these. Did you read them?
I did. And what did the bus drivers tell you, Heather?
They
what
said,
did they say?
More expensive, costly, unknown. Okay, when we ask them, like concerns, cost, loss of income, communication with families and kids, job security, wages, loss of needs of the children, driver's retirement will be gone, drivers maybe will leave because of the unknowns, may not be willing to work together, moving around from school to school, it just goes on of what they're worried about, what's unknown. That's all I'm saying is by going into negotiations where they can sit one-on-one, these questions will go away. Then we can resurvey them, and then they have all the facts, and maybe they're like, yeah, it's still better with the district. But that's all I'm saying.
I think strategically, it's the worst decision we could ever make, and I think we need to put this whole thing to bed.
Okay.
Put it to rest.
Thank you for your opinion.
Because strategically, once the contract is up, our cost structure is in question.
Okay. We're going to move forward. There is a motion and a second on the table. So we are going to vote. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Roll call. Leo?
No.
Heather? Yes. Toby?
No.
Angela?
No.
Dave?
Yes.
Jody? No. Motion does not pass. We are now going to move on to the smudging policy.
Recommend approval of policy 419.1, smudging in traditional Indian ceremonies. I'm recommending approval of this and recommending approval of the parent waiver and consent form. In the policy, I want to bring note to something the last legislative session changed, and the school board adopted a policy to model this. It's general statement of policy letter A. I'll give it a second. This past legislative session that ended this last May, it was approved in our tobacco policy that it is not a violation of that policy for an American Indian adult to light tobacco. In our case, we would use sage, cedar, or sweetgrass in a public school as part of a traditional Indian spiritual or cultural ceremony. The ceremony is performed pursuant to the procedures established in that policy. In that policy, what it says is that ceremony needs to be led by an adult member of a Native American tribe. And I checked with our district attorney just for some clarification, because I know the words do not specifically say smudging, but it is our district attorney's opinion that smudging would fall under either traditional Indian spiritual or under the cultural ceremony, and would thus be allowed under this policy that the school board's already approved. What putting a policy in place would do is give the school districts some more guidelines, procedures. It would require, before the ceremony would take place, for myself to be notified so many days in advance, our head of maintenance to be notified so many days in advance, neighboring classrooms, and it would require to have the parental consent for the students to participate. I have also checked with our lead out of Resource Training and Solution, who's very much up to date on our HVAC and our air quality systems. He walked around the building with Bruce Williams, myself, and Keith Betters. Our building is perfectly fine to do these type of ceremonies, and I have also checked with our insurance company, and because you always got to worry about the worst case scenario. If a worst case scenario happened where something did maybe set on fire, things like that, it would be covered on our insurance policy. So the way the law and statute was changed last spring, it would already allow for these traditional Indian spiritual and cultural ceremonies. The policy would just put some more procedures in place for our school district.
Does anybody have any questions regarding the smudging policy that has been presented?
And Brian, I noticed right after it says tobacco in there, they always list, what is it, sage?
Cedar and sweetgrass.
Yes, so is that the tobacco they're talking about? I mean, are we talking about conventional tobacco like Velvet or Prince Albert? No, it's one of those three things.
We would have one of these three: sage, cedar, or sweetgrass. We would not have.
That's what the tobacco is they're talking about.
That's what we would use at Hinckley-Finlayson schools.
And what they used when Heather and I were at when they got the new drum, it's not chewing tobacco or smoking tobacco. It's
one of those three things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Brian, do you know what other districts are doing, like Wenamia and Deer River and Isle?
Isle has specifically, I think they've only done it once so far, but they don't have a policy. They just let it happen the one time under their tobacco policy. Other schools, St. Paul and Duluth specifically have that. We believe Proctor has a smudging policy. But again, I'll circle back to what our attorney's opinion was, is our policy and statute already would allow that, and this, by having a policy, would just put more local hows to do it, make sure the communication and procedures are followed appropriately.
So would students be doing this during class time?
I believe it would happen, I guess I don't know that specifically. It could happen maybe during advisory time. It could happen before or after school, or when we host our big powwows that we have at the end of the year. It certainly probably could happen other times, but I think those would be the most common times that our staff are planning.
And then what about staff? Would the staff members who are overseeing this be doing this during their duty day?
Yes.
Can I ask a question? It's just for my own personal.
Bob, you'll have to wait till after the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And is there will there be any professional cleaning or cleaning of the room in which we have the smudging? And I do support the Indians, Native American students to practice their cultural event, but I also want to balance that with maintaining the building and respect for the other students. Would there be any professional cleaning of the room that you would envision this taking place in after such ceremony?
What Resource Training and Solution staff said our HVAC system should take care of most of the smell. I believe, I guess I don't know what cleanup looks like, but between the Indian education staff and then our custodial staff, I think we'd be able to take care of that.
And Brian, my understanding is definitely no smoking that's being allowed.
They're not smoking it, no.
And even by carrying that tobacco pouch, those students are not allowed to be smoking in school either, right?
Correct.
Thank you.
Now I was looking under 4, under group ceremony procedures, A5.
Okay.
It says, inform potential ceremony attendees in any advertisement or written communication that tobacco will be used as part of the ceremony and advise them of any other natural plants that may be used in the ceremony. I guess I have some concern with the wording of any other natural plants. That just leaves it wide open.
We could certainly take that off and leave that as just sage, cedar, or sweetgrass.
And then I was also wondering too, could there be an option that we could look at and study perhaps, maybe having a, Shakopee just recently made the news with their outdoor building, which looked really nice. I think it was on Fox 9 News, and it's garnered a lot of attention nationally as well. But they have that for their smudging, a very nice looking outdoor building that was constructed by students. Is that something we could consider, just to kind of not have to have smoke inside of our school building? I mean, there's so many disadvantages by doing that inside the school building. And I feel like if we could just study that a little bit more, maybe think about ways we could construct an outdoor building, that would take care of a lot of my concerns.
I guess we could certainly look at that, but I'd bring back to the statute and that's why I emphasized in a public school building, is the statute already would allow it to be in the school building. And I guess I don't feel like we should go against the statute.
And could we also maybe just slow down and take the time to see what Deer River and Onamia do?
I think one of the reasons you want to do it today, because that ceremony's supposed to take place in April, right?
My plan all school year had been that March we were going to do a first read, in April we were going to approve. One of the main reasons is for the powwow ceremony. The powwow ceremony did change. It was scheduled, I believe, for April 12th, and now it's April, which before based on attorneys' input and recommendation, it really could already be happening, and the policy procedures in place to make sure the communication and everything is happening as it should.
I feel like there's still a lot of questions that need to be answered. Natural plants, and if something would happen, insurance would cover it, but then what happens to our insurance rates when it comes time to renew our insurance? We're not in a position where we can just take a big hit or have a claim unnecessarily.
All right, so I'm looking for a motion to accept the smudging policy.
I'd like to make a motion to table this until next month.
I already have a motion to accept the smudging policy.
I'll second.
There's a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
So we'll do roll call.
Yes.
Leo? Toby?
No.
Angela?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Jody, yes. Motion passes 5-1. Next up is the ESSER proposal.
ESSER, just to kind of help with the vernacular, is our federal dollars that we've received during the pandemic. Our ESSER dollars need to be spent prior to the beginning of next school year. In the past, and then kind of going into the second paragraph, we have been allowed to use carry over these expenses to help with utility expenses and to help not create new expenses. But MDE has told us that's no longer allowable. So I'd go back to my first paragraph. I'm recommending that we use the remaining ESSER dollars we have to help with some of the capital costs that we had talked about, with 60 student devices, 50 student iPads, 34 staff devices, $20,000 towards smart boards, and up to $45,673.59 for a type 3 vehicle, and you can see that adds up to $181,168.59. It will help us with reducing next year's capital budget. These are things that we very much need at this time, including the type 3 vehicle. We we are researching type 3 vehicles, not only to help with our day-to-day, but also maybe a larger type 3 vehicle to help with some of our larger activities and not having to take a school bus. Our devices are mostly out of warranty. I think Jessica has many that, if they're not already, will be shortly out of warranty. And this will help get some more devices on hand for those that are breaking already, and then those that we're continually having to repair. So recommend approval of these things using our ESSER dollars, which if we don't spend, we have to send back, and that will help reduce our capital budget for next year.
So that,
You go first.
that 45,000 for a type 3, what vehicle is that going to be? That's a lot of money for.
And that was how much was left after the devices. So things Bruce and I have talked about is a larger 10-passenger van. We have looked at just minivans again, which last year when we bought the two, I can't think of the names of the truck, Pacificas, they were both around $40,000. So this gives a little bit of room to maybe find something bigger. We just began the research because I didn't want to get too far ahead of ourselves in case it didn't get approved tonight. I don't know if you, Bruce, you have any more information on what?
Nothing concrete. I mean, 10-passenger vans are hard to find because we, by rule, are bound. A type 2 driver cannot drive a vehicle with over 10 passengers in it. So, and if we go larger than that, we can get a 15-passenger van, but then we have to have a driver with a CDL that would be behind the wheel of that. You know, the smaller buses, just like our bigger buses, they're about the same cost, which doesn't make any sense, but they are still at $120,000 for a small bus, so.
Had a little experience with the 15 and the 10s for rent. If you go to a 15, it's incredible, the insurance. I mean, you just about can't have, because they handle so much different, just about can't afford the insurance fee going from a 10 to a 15 passenger.
And space in a type 3 is what we need. Like, we don't need more vehicles, we need space in the vehicles.
We need both. We need space and more. We are at capacity right now with our type 3s. Even with buying 2 last year, just the special education need changes so much that, for example, if any staff member wanted to go to a meeting right now and use a district vehicle, that it's not possible. Unless they maybe traveled from 9 a.m. and we're back by 2 o'clock, because we send everything out almost daily for routes.
And what's the age of the vehicle? Is it, they have to be a certain age?
DOT changed that. They just have to pass DOT inspection now, is my understanding of
They
that.
can be up to 12 years old now.
So why wouldn't we look for a couple used cars for that money, so we have more vehicles, as opposed to one?
We certainly could.
I mean, if vehicles are issue, not the space in the vehicle.
If they're sound, I guess.
Space would be cheerleading, maybe speech, robotics, you know, where maybe they have more than our vans or our Suburbans would hold. We have some groups that are not quite enough for a bus, even though we take a bus, but are more than our passenger vans. That would be the benefit of a 10-passenger, is maybe some of those.
No, I get the 10-passenger, I'm just saying instead of another Suburban, if we could get 2 vehicles for that price and have.
And maybe we can.
We can certainly look.
You need drivers. I mean, you know what we need, I'm just throwing it out there, if we could get 2 for that price as opposed to.
We certainly look.
Like, our problems now are our numbers of 12 to 18, you know, type thing. It'd be cheaper to send 2 type 3 vehicles versus a bus. So that's a possibility. You can look at that.
Yeah, you know what we need, so I'm just was wondering if it's.
Does anybody else have any questions? If there are no other questions, I'm looking for a motion to approve the ESER proposal.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
it.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Next up is the first resolution to accept donated funds.
Recommend approval of accepting this resolution from the Hinckley Lions. They donated $1,500 towards the open swim we had both in January and February.
So I'm looking for a motion to accept the donated funds.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. And the second resolution to accept donated funds.
Recommend approving this resolution as well from Robert and Elizabeth Dunnigan, who donated $1,000 towards our Wolf Ridge trip that we just had.
Does anybody have any questions regarding the Wolf Ridge donated funds? If not, I'm looking for a motion to approve those donated funds.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Next up is the new CDC recommendations on COVID.
If you saw, the CDC changed their recommendations about when someone can return to school or work if they test positive for COVID. So working with our nursing staff, we recommend changing our requirements to an individual could return to their normal activities such as school or work for at least 24 hours, symptoms are improving overall, and if a fever was present, it has been gone without the use of fever-reducing medication. Once people do resume their normal activities, they are encouraged, CDC uses the word encourage, to take additional prevention strategies for the next 5 days to curb disease spread, such as taking steps for cleaner air, enhancing hygiene practices, wearing a well-fitted mask, and keeping social distancing. Masking and testing are not required, just encouraged. So I recommend going with the CDC's recommendations for when someone can return from testing positive for COVID.
Does anybody have any questions? If there are no questions, I'm looking for a motion to approve the new CDC recommendations.
I move that.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Brad, could you just clarify, is there any recommendation for mask usage?
It's encouraged but not required.
Okay.
It's great, the last sentence there.
Sure.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. We are at the end of our agenda. I am looking for a motion to approve. Adjourn.